Today is Palm Sunday, and we are again looking at a verse passage about Jesus' triumphant entrance into Jerusalem. And this is an entrance that everybody around in Israel and every Jew would have known what Jesus was kind of doing here, the message that was kind of being sent by Jesus. Everything that Jesus was doing was something that was prophesied within the Old Testament and was a sign of the Messiah. So from taking a donkey, like a colt that had never been ridden on, that and march going into Jerusalem in that sort of way, riding on it, that was a symbol that everyone would have known, like this is a sign of the coming king. And this is why you get this reaction from the crowd of the palm fronds being waved and cloaks being thrown in front of the donkey. All of this were symbols for the coming of a king. And what I find so interesting in kind of my reading of it this year is that there's this little line at the end where it says that after Jesus has entered into Jerusalem, he goes to the temple, and when he has looked around kind of at everything, he just leaves. He just leaves. He just goes back to Bethany. It's kind of a weird sort of situation when you think about it. Here's Jesus he's making this triumphant entry. He's making this entry of a king, and you'd think he'd at least stay in Jerusalem, but no, he just kind of like looks around and leaves. And I find the kind of Mark's description of that kind of funny in some ways, because you'd expect that if somebody's walking in that way and kind of declaring themselves to be king, that they would probably stay in Jerusalem and maybe start trying to move towards that. But Jesus, he leaves. He goes back to Bethany, and I think what this is really kind of shows is that the mindset of Jesus and what was kind of his view of this event was very different from the view of the event for everybody around him. And for Jesus, this was just fulfilling prophecy. This was fulfilling prophecy that shows that he is the Messiah, and the meaning of that is much bigger than just being an earthly king. The fact that he has a kingdom in heaven means that he doesn't necessarily need to be moving to establish a earthly kingdom here in Jerusalem at this moment. And that isn't even his goal. But for the crowd, that is what they were expecting. So I do have to wonder if some of these individuals in the crowd, who I've often are, considered to be probably some individuals who were also in the crowd when Jesus was being crucified, I have to wonder if maybe some of the turn on Jesus had to do with just this fact that he came in this way and he just left. He just went back to Bethany, and that's something that I'm sure for people at that time, they just weren't able to really wrap their heads around. They weren't able to see that what they needed wasn't this earthly Messiah, this coming king who was going to try to reestablish the kingdom of Israel in Jerusalem. What they needed was somebody who was there to establish a heavenly kingdom and to give them a way from freedom from their sin, freedom from that type of oppression, not from the oppression of the Roman Empire itself, and not being able to kind of pick up on that. I imagine that maybe they would have felt a little bit insulted by all of this, a little bit insulted that this person comes in kind of pronouncing themselves almost as king, and then they're not even there for the 24 hours. They kind of stay outside of the city. But we ourselves have kind of the benefit of living post the cross, post Jesus' resurrection, and so we kind of understand that this event, it has more significance than just the coming of an earthly king. It is a sign that Jesus, the heavenly king, has gone into Jerusalem. It is the opening of Holy Week. It is where we, are starting to move towards that crucifixion. And that is the real moment that we see Jesus accomplish what he was sent here to do. And really sort of the moment that he's able to really truly establish his kingdom. In many ways, the triumphant entry, as we call it, really isn't Jesus's triumph. The triumph for Jesus is what's done on that cross, as well as his resurrection 3 days later. That is the triumph of Jesus. That is truly where he is triumphant. And that is something that we should be, as we're going into this week, mindful of, something that we should be thinking of, that we will be celebrating Jesus' triumph later on this week with his death and resurrection. Amen. And now I'd like to invite you all to join me for our last worship song today.